Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for tuning in again to Loft Media. We're back after a bit of a brief spell. My wife and I, we've had a relaxing time over the Christmas period with family and friends, and then we've also had a drive to a holiday to Victoria. We timed our run to make sure they didn't lock us down or lock us up. On that trip, we had a fortnight down there, once again visiting family and friends after the few years that we haven't been able to meet up with them. So that was a great time away, and but now we're back to work, so to speak, Loft Media, and today I'd like to talk about trust and truth. So we're living in a weird time. Those of us who are of the older generation have never seen anything like this in our lifetimes. The ridiculous rising of prices of homes, the unbelievable low interest rate, the inflation rate that's in the background that no one's talking about, this vaccinations that appears to be a very new industry. There is so much uncertainty that's going on. And I'll say this ridiculous wearing of masks here in Queensland, in the regional and rural areas, is beyond comprehension. But because of the government employees or the government is telling us we have to do these things, we're just following the script, and there's so many weird things that are going on. You know, when I talk to business people around the place, they just scratch their heads and just say it's unprecedented. We can't plan for the future, so we're just sort of sitting on our hands and waiting to see what bomb comes next. So today's topic is around truth and trust, and I'm saying for those that have got their trust in government, let me tell you, you've got your trust in the wrong place. The government is, they might be doing their best, but my goodness me, it's a mess. And that's both in the federal, the state, and the local government is also struggling under the pressures of the times that we're living in. It's unprecedented, even here in regional Queensland in Maryborough. The price of homes is sort of jumping nearly daily, and in Hervey Bay is the same. There's people offering prices that are above the asking price. There are people buying homes sight unseen, paying over $1 million for them in Hervey Bay, I've recently heard. Real estate agents, it's a great time for them, but I just see these low interest rates can't last. I'm not a financial advisor, but I've been around finance for a long time, and this just all does not stack up. So truth and trust is what today's about. The truth is something that will set you free because it goes click on the inside. We all understand it inherently. I'm not making up these figures of house rises. You're all wise enough to know these sorts of things as well. I'm just confirming that all these things put together is starting to make a fearful community rather than one that can trust. Okay, just over this period of time I've been looking at the politicians that we have federally and state-wise, and in particular, and I'd just like to say there are some people that I'm beginning to listen to who, to me, have got a lot of common sense in what they're talking about, and they're not scared to stand up. It is quite unfortunate that most of the people who are willing to stand up are only on the conservative side, because all the sheep on the left side and the Greens just seem to go along with whatever I will call it, world government or international people say they need to do. There's no one that upsets the apple cart on the left side of things, and the ABC is a news media that I rarely watch now, because it's basically just the flagship for the left side of politics, which, let me tell you, you've just got to look at Victoria and where they're going and continuing to head in a very bad direction. No wonder so many people in Victoria looking to escape that regime down there. But the politicians that I've begun to look at, and I'd be interested to know your thoughts as well, as to who you sort of are in communication with that you trust. And I've just got ones like Amanda Stoker, Malcolm Roberts, who we've had interviewed here, Pauline Hanson, Lou O'Brien, Scott Morrison. Boy, isn't he under the pump? I mean, everything that's wrong is Scott Morrison's fault, which is a ridiculous way that is trying to slay the man. I could say that the media and the opposition is trying to crucify him, and how he keeps standing it, it's a grace that's beyond him. Mark Latham is another one. George Christensen. Now, George is a big fella from up north in Queensland, not scared to speak his mind, and he's what I call one of the common sense Pollies. He's just started basically a push towards taking back the Port of Darwin. For your own information, the Port of Darwin was given a 99-year lease to the Chinese people. George is also, saying that universities need to disclose if they receive foreign funds. He wants to boost manufacturing. He wants to basically ditch China and we stand on our own 2 feet. That's how I would summarise where he's going, and what the Chinese have done with putting tariffs on our beef and barley, wine and coal, and there seems to be no dispute that they started this virus. So you just see where the big push from what I'll call the Red Dragon is not really, they're not our friends. So we need to stand on our own 2 feet, and George is all about that. Andrew Hastie is another top fella. He's about keeping us safe, which is very important. And in mid-March, for your own information, which you might not know, that there was a meeting with the Prime Minister, and they were making Friends with India, Japan, the US and Australia. It's called the Quad. So just keep your eye on that one, with liberal democracies working together to protect their sovereign countries. Jim Molan is another one, is a senator as well, a really top guy who's currently on leave through, he's undergoing cancer treatment. I'm sure there's more politicians who are willing to stand and confront the stupidity and the lack of common sense that comes from our governments. I'd be interested to know if you've got some ones in Queensland for us on the Conservative side, or if there is anyone in the Queensland Labor Party in Parliament. I did know Joanne Miller was, she just stood firm in regards to the corruption that was around the Ipswich Council, and was yelling from the rooftops for about 10 years about that, which they all regarded her as sort of a traitor to the cause. But she just spoke up for the truth, and Queensland ALP should hang their head in shame with the way they treated that lady. So trust in government. So can I just point you to a book that I've been reading a few books of late, and that I find the books that I'm enjoying is the true stories or the testimony of people's lives. So this is one book. Does that come up all right? Yep. I Kid You Not by Lyle Shelton. And it's a gem of a book. Now, this man, he just will not be knocked down, let me just say. He's a really decent fella, and thoroughly enjoyed the book. And it's titled, I Kid You Not, Notes from the 20 Years in the Trenches of the political world. But I'll just give you, he has an unwavering commitment to the truth and integrity, and he stands for what is right. And he was a councillor, just a brief history on him. He was a councillor in Toowoomba. That's where he began his political interest, and in the Toowoomba Council. And he was a new councillor there, and at the time Peter Beattie was he was the Premier of Queensland, and they said, the state said, we're going to make a law that any town over 25,000 people has to approve an application for a brothel. And Lyle didn't think that was right for his town. So he stood against this ordained from the state government that no matter what, you have to do this anyway. And he makes a remark in his book. He said, Beattie, in his classic media style, said to him at some stage, the churches of Queensland all support the brothel laws. And Lyle just said, no, they don't. You know, the truth, and seriously, the longer I go in this journey, truth just doesn't matter with Labor and the ALP. You know, they're not about truth. They're more about, they just make up the lies verbatim. And it was a classic statement. The churches of Queensland support the brothel laws. So Lyle knew they didn't. Anyway, he fought with the Labor state government of the time. And he made a classic statement. And Toowoomba, as far as I know, did win that battle to not have that installed into their town plan. And Lyle said, what father would encourage his daughter to be a prostitute? So it was one that hit home the heartstrings of thinking people. So, and that's a sort of decent sort of fella he is, and a wide thinking. The other battle that he fought was some of the older ones will remember the poo water issue in Toowoomba when they were running a drought, and they had an overseas company come over to Toowoomba and said, we can solve your solutions by using recycled poo water. And he fought that and won, and eventually, as it says in the book, the details of this overseas company, they were a scam and a sham, and they were just trying to reap millions of dollars out of the naive Toowoomba Council, and saying that other countries overseas use recycled poo water and oil, which is still an issue in many, many countries. Most of the crowded Asian countries use desalinated water. Beg your pardon. So I do recommend I Kid You Not is a great book written by a great guy, and you haven't heard the last of Lyle Shelton. He was the boss of the Australian Christian Lobby, and there's a bright future for Lyle still in politics. You'll hear about him. People like that are just not going to lie down and take the rubbish that is wanting to be pushed onto the Australian public. Okay, another piece of interesting information that I've come across. I've been doing a bit of research in regards to Cardinal Pell, who you might know. He was in jail, convicted out of the Victorian courts. I mean, the Victorians certainly do not like religious people, and the whole system in Victoria is geared against basically the people of who have religious values. The Cardinal Pell lost. He was convicted. Lower court, went to the Supreme Court, Victoria, got convicted again, went to jail, was in jail for 14 months, and then the appeal to the High Court, which was funded by friends to the tune, I think it's about $400,000, and it was a unanimous, very quick decision by the High Court to say that there was nothing that should have convicted him in regards to that particular incident. And so he was released. So he's began writing his memoirs, interesting memoirs to here. And he, the way I read it, he's also not going to stand down against even the Vatican, of which he was employed with. And the part of the story goes, he was asked to check the finances of the Vatican. And as he was doing that, there was some huge number of bank accounts that had money in them and were not needed, and he found a lot of evidence and proof. There is a difference, and he all of a sudden found himself with a lot of charges against him, and he got sent back to Australia, and that's how he ended up in jail. But just part of the shenanigans that were going on, AUSTRAC, which is the financial crime watchdog for Australia, was asked to look into it. And I'll just read this article from newspaper in Europe. AUSTRAC claimed the Vatican-wide $2.3 billion to Australia, and the true figure was 9.5. I'll continue to read. In London, the financial crime watchdog has issued a grovelling apology after accidentally telling Parliament that the Vatican transferred $2.3 billion to Australia over 7 years when the actual amount was less than $10 million. AUSTRAC has now conceded the figure was 242 times higher than the total of 9.5 million, and they blamed the software for the bungle. It's jaw-dropping to think that they would make a statement to Parliament and then retract, but the statement to be 2.3 billion and then to take it back to 9.5, and then they blame software. I mean, do we all just trust the computers so much that whatever the computer says, then that must be the answer, without igniting our brains into these things? So it's true statement. So these were all things that were done in regards to George Pell. So who came up with the figure that it was 2.3 billion? Anyway, it's millions of dollars. The article goes on to say that the agency also miscalculated how much money had been sent from Australia to the Vatican. It originally told the Senate the figure was 117.4 million over 7 years, when it was actually 26.6. I mean, trusting in the government, I'm just saying, is when you can get figures coming from top agencies that are so far out, who is running the show? The relevant law authorities really need a washout. I don't know. And there's more to this story too. There's one of the other bishops. It appears as though he certainly had Cardinal Pell in the gun, and I think there'll be a bit more to come on that. So the trusting in the government agency, the federal government, in regards to finance, that's a big blunder. That's not just a few dollars. It's a lot out. Another one of trusting in, here we are in Queensland. Title from Brisbane Times, Queensland's hospital and health services are stricken with debt, a report warns. Now these are all the reports. There's a lot of reports that didn't come out before the state election that we've recently had in Queensland. I'll just read the beginnings of this. The 16 bodies set up to run Queensland's hospitals are rapidly becoming laden with debt and do not have systems in place to effectively communicate with each other and the health department, a report has found. The latest report from the Queensland Audit Office has found 11 of the state's 16 hospital and health services reported operating losses in the 1920 financial year, 3 more than in the year before. So each year there's a huge number of the health services are reporting a continuing and ever-increasing loss. For your own knowledge, when I was in council, we were told, and the state government was told, they can't have a debt over $85 billion. And the debt situation for Queensland government is, I don't think they know what they're up to yet. 125, 130 billion. I know, there's just no accounting of it, and the debt. Once again, it's the debt of the Australian government's gone into the huge amounts of money. Who knows the figure? $1 trillion? I don't know. I mean, it just keeps going up and up. So the Queensland Health Director General John Wakefield said in a response released as part of the report that the hospital and health services had faced a challenging year caused by the impacts of the pandemic and the implementation of the troubled S-4 HANA financial system. Who's paying for these financial systems? We are, the Australian public. I mean, do they test run them before they put all their finances into them? So are the figures true or not? Who knows? Queensland doesn't know. While I'm on that, the vaccinations, let me just say, it's unbelievable, the issue on these vaccinations, how companies have been given orders to fulfill for countries right around the world. This is the chemical industry or the pharmaceutical industry, to make these vaccines that they've made in double quick time. These particular companies have all been given immunity from the various governments around the world in regards to if there are side effects to these vaccines. Now, I don't know how much all these vaccines are costing, but the vaccines, that are generally tested over years and years and years, and to see how they go. But this seems to be a big push. I just don't understand it, by government on the you and I's of the community of Australia and Queensland are being pushed to take these vaccines that no one will be held liable for if there's side effects. To me, too early, wait and see. And there'll be more about these vaccinations push as we roll on. It's just part of government taking control of your life. I mean, I think it would be good for people to do research in regards to Germany and back in Hitler times, when who would have ever thought the control of government over people. We live in a democracy. We're supposed to live in a democracy here in Queensland. Are we getting the truth out of these vaccinations? Are we getting the truth out of the COVID reporting numbers? Anyway, that's an issue for another time. Okay, just in line with the truth and trust theme also, I do trust Senator Malcolm Roberts, and he recently um, spoke in Parliament. He was trying to get up a motion which was in regards to a full Senate inquiry into the local governments of Queensland, the local government sector. And so he, on the 23rd of February 21, and we'll put it up, that contact from Hansard. But basically, I just love the way that he speaks in the Senate. And he always begins with, as a servant to the people of Queensland and Australia, I wish to further discuss the corruption that continues in Queensland local government. And it goes on, and his is about particularly about the NDRRA funding. And I can say that's federal government funding that comes to the state, to the local governments as well, after a disaster. So as an example, if a cyclone hits, say, Harvey Bay or a flood, something, and a huge cost to the local community, which is beyond the local council's scope, say it was $100 million, 75 million of that would come from the feds and 25 from the state to fix up things that have been caused by that disaster event. So that's called the NDRRA. It's and he's really goes to town on the issue of the unaccountability of that money, of which there's a lot of question marks about it. Unfortunately, he didn't get it up. He couldn't get enough senators to agree to that Senate inquiry. Knowing Malcolm, he won't let it rest. There's plenty of other issues, and he won't let the issue of the corruption within the local councils of Queensland and it's linking to the state government as well. He won't let up. He'll continue. But that's well worth reading his speech in Hansard. Well, thank you very much for listening and viewing again, and I look forward to having more conversations with various people as the year rolls on. We've got a couple of politicians who have penciled in coming, and a few more local characters that are well worth listening to their story. Everyone's got a story, and it's just good to hear each other and to hear these things, and really we are concerned for the way that this country is heading, and I know people that view this are also concerned, and it's one way of getting the message out of the imbalance, I feel. It's the truth. So let's keep getting the truth out there, and bring it to light. Bring the darkness. Bring a light into the darkness, and let's continue to work together. So till next time, thanks very much for viewing.